Well, good evening. We've reached the witching hour, so I guess we'll get started. I'm Dave Raleigh, your little guide for this evening's topic. So, we're going to be talking about portable cockpit computers. The image on your screen is looking out across the eastern plains of Colorado, the little community that is just kind of in the bottom third to the left a little bit is Lyman, Colorado. So, it's about 45 miles east of our home airport, and it's somewhere that most of us at least make one trip to every year. We're on the third webinar this evening. So we're doing Intro to Portable Gliding Computers. And so that's where we're headed. I've got next two seminars switched around. Our presenter for the soaring pilot physiology needed to come in a little earlier than we had planned. So our next one will be soaring pilot physiology instead of speed to fly. Okay, for those of you that have been asking, how do I get to the presentation? If you go to the members SSA site, log in, go to my homepage, news and resources, and then webinars. If you click on the webinar title, you'll get the recording of the webinar. If you click on the slides heading, then you'll get to download the slides in a PDF form. So for everybody that's wondering, how do I get a copy of the slides, or can I get to see this again, or if I missed it, how do I get to it? You've got some information now to pass on to them. Again, the webinar itself, providing the software and hosting for the evening, Frank Wheatley and the SSA for providing the software. We have a Wings proficiency team, and these are our FAST team members. These folks are the ones that work to make sure that you guys get Wings credit for this. So if you registered for the seminar with your Wings user ID, the email that you used for Wings, then it will be applied over the next few days. If you used a different user ID, I've noticed that the SSA is sending a notice saying, gee, we got this address, or is this you, and do you want to register, or do you need put it against another ID? So we'll see how that works out. Guidelines from the FAA is you got to be here for a majority of the time. So please hang around. Excuse me. As we get started with this, and no. Well, okay. Doesn't matter. This was going to be a cute little video on, it's an old insurance ad that was up there. So two student pilots standing next to the aircraft, they took each other for their instructor, and they launched, and about the time they released, the instructors are looking up at them going, what happened? And the whole point of it is that you have to remember, we're discussing this topic with the early cross-country learner in mind. So we don't want them heading out without proper preparation. Going through our course materials, our purpose tonight is to help folks understand glider cockpit computer use, improve in-flight situational awareness by using them, and give a little bit of a demonstration on what it looks like to use one of these computers. We're back around to our decision support. Only with the cockpit computers, we're gathering a whole lot of data, and we have to transform it, turn it into information, present it to the pilots so that they can make decisions. Again, as I keep saying every time I put this slide up, it doesn't have to be absolutely accurate. Close is usually good enough. The real question is the information good enough to make decisions, not how precise is it? So the problem that we're facing when we're looking at this is humans generally do not handle multiple simultaneous complex tasks very well. All right. We're usually in a single seat aircraft, and it can be high stress. And when the stress goes up, the enjoyment has a tendency to go down. Interestingly, it's often said people can handle 5 plus or minus 2 tasks. And of course, everyone, especially a pilot, assumes that they can handle 7 tasks or more well. The problem is there are times when we're lucky to handle one task, and sometimes that's poorly. So the workload, I've got 6 areas up here: fly the sailplane, maintain your situational awareness, navigate, analyze data, make decisions, and execute your decisions. Okay, so 6 items for us to handle out of our 5 plus or minus 2. And sometimes we find ourselves in a position that we can barely handle that first task up there. Our questions, we're always asking, where am I? The answer there is pilotage. Where do I want to go? Well, that's our pre-flight planning, so dead reckoning. Which direction do I want to go? Can I get there from here? Now we start combining our pilotage with our initial planning. And where's the nearest place to land? And again, our current pilotage and our dead reckoning. So before we had these computers in the cockpit, because this has only been the last few years. And of course, if you're well up there in age, a few years, it just seems like it was yesterday. And if you're someone who's never seen it without a computer, then you're going, what's the big deal? When I started, we were using marked up sectional charts in an E6B, so basically a circular slide rule. We navigated by pilotage, so reference to the visible landmarks, and we used dead reckoning, so we computed the direction and distance from a known position. So the computer in the cockpit was 1 part pilot's brain and 1 part to E6B. And, a lot of our dead reckoning came from our pre-flight planning, so we could identify those landmarks and the distances involved and stuff like that. And of course, it's always been said that no plan survives first contact, but the planning does prepare the pilot, for what they're going to be faced with. The computer can help reduce the pilot's workload. All of these, it can help, okay? It can improve the pilot's situation, help improve the pilot's situation, help reduce stress. And by addressing those 3 topics, it can help increase the enjoyment. Out of those 4 out of those 6 workload tasks, so navigation, situational awareness, analyzing all the information that they've got presented to them, and supporting decision making. This is where the computer comes in real handy. We do have to remember, though, the computer does not make the decision for the pilot. I've heard too many times when somebody said, well, the computer said, it has nothing to do with whether it's flying or some other activity, but they were abrogating their responsibility to the box that, the only thing it's got is, it doesn't have anything on the line. At least it doesn't know it does. And one of the things we have to remember is, especially if it's a close decision, we always have to check outside to cross-check the recommendation. We don't want to jump into it if, we don't want to take that recommendation if it's a poor one. So the computer is sharing our workload, and it's helping answer questions. It's helping us keep track of our current location and our current destination. It updates the heading information to the current destination. It provides overall destination and solution, including our current altitude, speed, and winds. It provides recommendations and destination solution for nearby landable locations. Okay, so it's unloading the pilot from a lot of the detail work and presenting potential recommendation or presenting recommendations to the pilot. Now, the problem with the computer, if it's not properly employed, it can increase the pilot's workload. It can actually reduce the pilot's situational awareness. I don't know how many times, you've probably seen somebody looking at a screen and they've just locked up. They can't deal with everything that's being presented to them, at which point it increases the stress and the enjoyment goes down. So one of the things that you've got to do with this is you've got to work through your learning curve and usage issues. How are you going to use it? And first, you got to do it on the ground. Uh, One of the best ways, again, you talk about our evolving technology, probably one of the best ways is to hook up your computer to the simulator, and, Condor in this case. The other one is to do it in a two-place aircraft. Um, I've also recommended, uh, riding in the passenger seat in a car while you run the computer and somebody else is driving. The only problem with that is if the person that's driving gets distracted by what you're doing on the computer, then they're not driving anymore. It isn't a free ride. Using the computer in the cockpit is a new skill. Okay, so this is something that you have to learn, and it takes baby steps. So you're not going to use the computer the first time well. You may not even understand it. And the other one is it takes some time to grow your ability to do this. Like I say, it's a skill that you've got to develop. One of the interesting ones that I've found, we have ClearNavs in our K-21. We have one in the front seat and one in the back seat. And we ran into an interesting thing. I was out with a friend a few years back, and it turned out I thought I had configured both computers exactly the same. It turned out that somebody had used one of them, and it was no longer configured the same. It had different databases. It had different information displayed on the screen and stuff like that. And so while I'm in the back seat and my friend's in the front seat, and we're trying to communicate about what he's seeing on the screen so I can help him work through his adaptation to this new kind of a task and skill development in the cockpit. And it was just very interesting because the computer got in the way because what he was seeing was not what I was seeing. And so what I was talking about was confusing to him. Our enabling technologies. The thing that's making this possible is that we've got small general purpose computing devices that have adequate power, display capabilities, and have decent user interface. Externally sourced navigation data. A few years before GPS hopped online, we were trying to use LORAN, but GPS came online, and that's become our external source for the navigation data. And then we have the computer software, the software that's running on these devices that has soaring specific performance algorithms and information, a mapping representation, and information overlays. Again, a gentleman that I used to work with was a Air Force pilot, and his primary role was ground attack. And he said, wow, I've got a computer in my cockpit that has a better moving map display than what I had in my airplane in the Air Force. So the key technology here is satellite-based navigation. So our device must have access to GPS information if we're going to do this in a reasonable fashion. And then once we have the GPS data, the device needs to run some kind of soaring support software. Now, what we've got in our computer or in our gliders, we've got two basic types of computers. We've got a handheld, and I'm considering it a handheld even if it's mounted in a holding fixture. And then we've got a built-in, so it's installed as part of the glider's instrument panel. The other one is computers can be standalone, so it doesn't require connection to the glider for power or data. The other one is a dependent installation where it does require connections to the glider for power or data. Now, basically, what we're going to be talking about is using a standalone handheld computer in the cockpit. That's the purpose of this presentation. Our goals. One of my goals every time I've gotten in a plane and tried to put a computer in it is the best one is something you already own. And then the other one, even if it's less than optimal, I keep trying to do this for less than $200. Okay, so, your LXNav built in the panel that's $3,000 or maybe more is great. But remember, we're talking about the person who's starting to fly cross country. They're not likely to have that kind of equipment in the aircraft. So my goal is to have it be a standalone device. So it doesn't have to connect to the glider for power or data. Now, there are times when we can't get, we just can't get around that. So there are interface devices out there that we can use to connect into the glider to connect to their little handheld devices. Now, for Android, especially where we're trying to cross over from a RS-232 serial device into a USB and serve to a tablet or a phone or something else, we can get this little device, this little box. This connects an RS-232 serial device on one side, multiplexes them together, and sends the data out the USB port going to the USB device. So our serial ports plug in here, and here's the USB port that goes out to, let's say an Android tablet of some type. The interface is bidirectional. For instance, I can set the MacCready on the tablet and have it set the MacCready in the Vario. The other thing that this little box can do for us is it's got enough power that it can charge the device that's plugged into the USB port. Now, it probably only has about an amp, maybe an amp and a half at most on the power. So, if you've got a device that when it's running a screen and it's running hard on the computation side and receiving GPS and this and that and the other, it might not be able to charge one that's using all that power, but it might be able to keep the charge there. In this particular one, there are 3 ports right here. One is associated with the FLARM. The other is the pass-through to the FLARM display so that you can pick off the data to send over to your tablet for display or your computer for display. And then the third one is for variometer. When I was using one of these, I had my FLARM connected to 2 of them and a 302 connected to the third. And if you've got a really intensive cockpit where you've got a bunch more devices, there's actually 2 more ports inside this box that could be used. This thing comes as a kit from a little company called Soartronic. So spell it the way it just sounded and look for them on Facebook, and that'll give you a link to their website and all of that kind of stuff. The other one is if we're using a device that's not USB based, but is serial port based, like a Navitaire Odie. There's things like the K6 MUX, which would allow it to talk to a 302 or to a FLARM or that kind of thing. Okay. So that's if we really needed to have some kind of connection. So what are the types of computers? Well, we started out with personal digital assistants. These were Palm and Compaq and HP personal digital assistants, and then they had an external GPS source. The other things that popped up on the horizon, these are like your car GPS units. They were originally called personal navigation assistant or navigation device, or they had various names. And like personal navigation device or portable navigation device and that kind of thing. These had their own little GPS in them. They had mapping display or mapping capability. The nice thing is that they were running on a common operating system. It was a Windows mobile system, and they could be programmed like a regular computer. So we were able to get those up with soaring computers running on them, and it was kind of nice. I've converted a number of e-readers, generally Nooks from Barnes & Noble. It's been interesting because we found out that there were actually serial ports in there, and so we got little GPS bricks and wired them in and adapted, had to go in and adapt the operating system, but we got usable displays. However, they were all monochrome, and a lot of the data that's communicated in our software is communicated by colors. What we're using today is really the last 3 items: smartphones, general purpose tablets, and dedicated soaring devices. Okay. So this is where we're playing these days. With smartphones, there are a whole lot of others out there, but the ones that I've worked with are Samsung and Apple. They have internal GPS sources. They have a color display. Some of them are excellent in direct sunlight. Some are less than excellent in direct sunlight. One of the things until fairly recently, probably about the last 4 or 5 years, the screen size could be an issue with these guys. Uh, so it wasn't until fairly recently that we started to get into the 5 and 6 inch diagonal measure screens. It's usually a touchscreen user interface, and we've got Android and iOS operating systems. So the software that's going to run on these guys are XCSoar and its derivatives, and that'll be on Android, and Navigator, which will be on both Android and iOS. So when we look at tablets, we've got Samsung, Apple, and then there is a little Android tablet that is produced, it's sold by Walmart in this country. It appears that it's a private label production for them called ONN. Some of these will have internal GPS sources. Again, color display, and it has all of the same sunlight problems that you might have with a cell phone. The interesting thing here is now we're starting to talk about screen sizes. So like a mini iPad or a 7 inch. I've used a Samsung 7 inch tablet and the ONN 7 inch tablet in a cockpit. I like the size of the display. I don't have to squint to use it, or, you know, uh, my bifocal required eyes can work with it at the distance, that kind of thing. Again, it's Android and iOS, so the same kinds of software that we had on the other one. We do have dedicated devices out there. So we have the Navitier ODI and the ODN. LXNav has a Nano 4 with a really small screen. I've never used it in the cockpit. I just look at it when I go to the convention and go, how could I use that in a cockpit? Generally, it's internal GPS source with these guys. Some of the very early ones had the automobile GPS chip in there, which was, it wasn't great, but it was still a good GPS chip. Color displays, some of these are excellent in sunlight. They've been evolving, and that's good. Touchscreen user interface, larger screens like the ODN will allow fingertip input. The ODI itself is got a resistive touchscreen, so your finger can be a little bit big, and so a stylus actually works a little better. The various operating systems are, Microsoft, Android, and then they're custom operating systems for some of them. The difference with these compared to the others is cost. One of the nice things with these three devices, the ODN now has a 5.7 inch screen, so that's really nice. I like the larger screen. All of these devices are going to need power. So we've either got an internal battery or we've got an external source that's plugged into it. All of them are going to need some kind of secure mounting. So you're going to have some kind of arm that mounts it to the airframe in some fashion, or it's got to be on a knee board. But you can't just set this thing on your lap and have it floating around in the cockpit, especially in turbulence. They will have GPS receivers, and so you need to have a little bit of a feel for where the antenna is on the device to make sure that it can see the sky. And it doesn't do any good to put the GPS antenna, buried down in the cockpit somewhere. Most of our soaring software, it's got a profile for the glider being flown. So this is used for the performance-based information that's going to get put in front of you. They've got moving map capability that's derived from a map file. They've got airspace, so we're going to have an airspace file and maybe a TFR file. We're going to have airports and waypoints. That's going to be based on an airport and waypoint database. And then we're going to have a task It's going to support having a task defined. And again, that's going to be based on our airport and waypoint database. So you can see we've got lots of support stuff that we as the pilot are going to have to keep track of, maintain, and keep up to date. Most of the soaring software will give you a task line with a heading recommendation. And of course, that's going to be based on your airport and waypoint database and the task you have selected. It's going to get wind direction and speed, and that's going to come from using the GPS information. Nearest landable locations, again, our database and GPS. Altitude needed to get to an airport, so that's going to be airport database and the GPS. Glide slope information to a landing point. So now we've got the glider polar in there, the glider profile, and airport waypoint database and a GPS. Okay, so this is a interconnected system. The free software, okay, XCSoar and XCJet are pretty well joined at the hip. When you download the package, you can see the link up there on how to get to it. It can run on Microsoft, the mobile OS, but it's being deprecated, and I'm not really sure the current version will run on it. I haven't really looked at it because I'm not running any Microsoft devices. It will run on Android, it will run on Linux, and Top Hat is another piece of software that's out there. Again, it can run on all three of the operating systems. And then we have LK8000. And again, that operates on all three of the operating systems. Now, these are all open source projects that are basically staffed by volunteers. The development teams can range from 1 or 2 folks to a community of developers. These are somewhat similar products because in the dim, dark days of history, something like 10 or 15 years ago, these derived from a common baseline. Today, they each have grown into their own unique product. So XCSoar is probably the most mature of the open source gliding software. The interface is flexible, but that interface is not as advanced as what you would see in Naviteer's SeeYouNavigator. It's available from the Google Play Store, and but if you can also load it and sideload it from their website. The last version that was released of this was in December of 2023, and it's either 7.40 or 7.41. I don't remember which. XCSoar Jet is an XCSoar derivative. It mainly seems to be an integration of the SkySight weather model so that you can get that model in there and not just RASP. But there are some user interface improvements. Again, it's a Google Play Store download. The latest version was released in September of 2023, and so it's based on XCSoar 7.19. So it's running a little behind the current XCSoar. Top Hat is an XCSoar derivative. It was originally primarily an adaptation of the user interface to make it easier to configure and use. There are currently 2 versions on the Google Play Store, but it doesn't look like it's been updated since September 2017. And I've tried it. I haven't used it since that time frame. And so I don't really know what's happening with it, but right at the moment, unless you really, really want that user interface, realize that it's probably a dead end right now. LK8000, again, it's available from their website and from the Google Play Store, and its last version release was 2023, so it's being actively supported, and I know a number of people that are using LK8000. It has a slightly different user interface than XCSoar, and like I say, they all developed out into their own unique products. If you're looking to purchase software, iGlide still exists on the Apple Store. It's put out by Air Avionics. You can see the 3 levels and the prices. Uh, the Apple Store says they're running at version 2.9.5, and it's roughly 6 months old, so released sometime back in 2023. I was really surprised to find out that WinPilot is still out there. This was probably the first of the moving map ones that I ever heard about, and but it's available on the Apple App Store, and it's got a monthly license or a yearly license. And by the way, the prices that are quoted on here, I checked them earlier today. The App Store says version 1.62 was updated roughly about 3 months ago, so this one is still currently being updated. SeeYouMobile, Navitier made the SeeYou software available so that you could put it on a Microsoft device, so put it on a PDA or PNA or that kind of thing. It looks like it may still be available. It could work on a Microsoft portable device, but I couldn't find a price for it. I just, there's a link there, and so it looks like it might still be available. But this is tied to a end-of-life product, the original OD and OD2. So you're going to see support for this tapering off. And then you've got SeeYou Navigator. So this is Navitier's new product. It shifted from a simple flight recorder to where it's getting real close to being a full-featured cockpit computer. There are still some shortfalls in the software, but this is under current active development, and there are multiple releases. These are all still somewhat of a beta release. It's not fully baked yet, but that doesn't mean it's not usable. It's just that, if you're going to fly in a contest, it probably doesn't have everything that you need. But if you're flying for fun out and around the local airport and maybe doing some badge flying, it's probably got everything you need. One of the things that you're going to have to do with this is not so much anymore, at least not with any of the machines that I'm recommending, but some of them used to have to do some adaptation on the operating system in order to get it to load the soaring software. The old Nook hardware that we played with had a limited version of Android that needed to be patched in order to work with XCSoar, but that's pretty much a thing of the past. The various soaring software, one of the things you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get your displays oriented for your needs, organized for your needs. Now, that may not be necessary. The default display may be adequate to get you started. It does need to be configured for the glider that you're flying. Otherwise, it's not going to be giving you useful information. And that's always going to be needed. You're always going to have to get your either select it from a list or put in some parameters so that it can generate the polar for your glider. And those things have to be reviewed at least annually just to be sure that you're up to date. Our data configuration, this gets to be fun. Okay, for maps, Lynn Alley's website can produce map files based on the sectionals, and you can go into it and use it to generate maps. It'll be sectional based. It can be other formats. You just have to look at what he has available on his website. XCSoar and Top Hat are using a proprietary file structure, and you download it from the XCSoar website. LK8000 is likewise using a proprietary file structure, and so you download it from their website. For airspace, we've got airspace files that are available on the soaringweb.org. I just lost it. I'm sorry. Our soaring information web page. You can get the airspace. One of the nice things that you can do with Lynn Alley's website is you can go in and you can request all the TFRs within a radius of a airport. And so what this does is this allows you to go in like in the morning and you know there's some TFRs in your area. You can create a TFR airspace file on the morning of the flight. And XCSoar at least will allow you just to drop the file into the directory and then point to it on the configuration page. I'll show you that later so that you don't have to perturbate your airspace file. Term points are, again, our term point database. You can go there and look. I mentioned it previously, but you know, some of those files are getting pretty long in the tooth, and there's nobody specifically tasked to run out and go through them and make sure they're correct. So, you know, you may want to review them for your local area before you start depending on them. And then, of course, you've got tasks. You know, I say that you got to review this stuff at least annually. Okay. I go through and reset all my stuff in the spring before I start flying. My usage preferences. Okay. I've been an XCSoar user since 2014. I joined a partnership that had an ODI in their aircraft, so I transitioned to using an ODI as well. And then in my club, we have ClearNavs in our K-21 that I use for cross-country mentoring flights. So in 2023, I was using XCSoar in my ASH-26 with a Samsung Tab A tablet. It's a 7-inch tablet. I'll show it to you here in a minute. And the ONN 7-inch Android tablet. I was using CU, so I was using the SeeYouMobile on OD2 hardware in the glider. I was also using it with an iPhone 11 with Navigator, and I had Navigator running on my ONN 7-inch Android tablet. And then I was using ClearNav on in the K-21. If I said I was confused bouncing back and forth between them, that would be true. It wasn't unmanageable because basically I was starting from the position of I know I need to be able to do this. But still bouncing back and forth between them, I have, you know, some opinions. XCSoar gives you automatic switching between cruise or navigation, thermal, and final glide. I liked the thermal helper in XCSoar. What I like about Navigator and to some extent SeeYouMobile, but the ease of use, they're really easy to use. They have problems, the cons. There's a delay in switching between cruise and climb. I have probably that's a configurable, but I haven't found it. Well, I finally found it, and yeah, it's configurable, so I can change how long it delays going from cruise to climb and then from climb back to cruise. SeeYouNavigator, the ODI has a resistance touchscreen, so the end of your finger doesn't give you the resolution that you need. If you got a little bit of a longer fingernail, that helps, but basically a stylus is recommended for that. The thermal helper in the CU universe on every device that I've used so far, so the tablet, the phone, I haven't flown with a ODN yet, is at least a quarter circle behind when you're thermaling. And the climb performance colors are based on the MacCready setting. So it's showing your climb performance relative to your current MacCready setting. So if you're down low and scratching and you look over and if you got it set for MacCready 3 or 4 and the best you're seeing is 1.5 or 2, it's going to give you an indication that you're failing when in fact you're still climbing. But it doesn't, unless you drive the MacCready to 0, you don't have this absolute climb sync kind of thing that you get with some others. So it's like I say, it can be confusing, and of course, for me, bouncing back and forth between a number of devices, I have to rethink every time I do it. So that can be, that can be a problem. Navigator, the problem with Navigator is it's still a work in progress. Okay, it's not ready to be, it's not ready to be released as a full-fledged product yet. That doesn't mean that it's not a good product and it's not doing a lot of good things. All of these are very usable. I'm just pointing out, from my usage, my personal preferences. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of things, couple of tablets. I have a Samsung Sun Tab A 7-inch tablet. It's a standalone device. It can interface to the glider via Bluetooth or via a cable with that Sortronics multiplexer. It has a brighter display and it has an outdoor brightness override. So that override actually runs the brightness harder than the 100% setting on the slider bar. So it does make it a little brighter. It has an internal GPS and a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. And so it's probably okay for 2 to 4 hour flights. The cons, well, it's a 2016 device, so it's no longer in production. It's Android 5.1.1. There is no upgrade path from Samsung. There are a couple of open source things out there, but none of them get it above maybe late Android 7 something or early Android 8 something. I'm not real sure. But it was always more work, and there were a number of things that fell apart because people were trying to patch on top of a installed system. Probably another con for this thing's got a 7-inch screen. So small cockpits, this thing might be a problem. I've tested it with XCSoar 7.41 and everything works. XCSoar Jet, their version 1.19, which is based on XCSoar 7.19. Everything works except the SkySight interface doesn't work. And the reason for that is the protocol stack is not there for what they need for SkySight, and it needs to be at least Android 8 or higher to work. And so I can't, the basic flight software works, but if you were going to pick it up and you try to use this with SkySight, or if that was your reason to go to XCSoar Jet, then this isn't the device for you. Navigator won't even initialize. Navigator needs a minimum of Android 8 to work, and it's better at Android 9 or higher. So now some of the things, the software is downloadable from the Google Play Store. Those of you that have been playing with XCSoar, especially if you have some experience with it, sometime in the last 2-3 years, Android changed the directory structures for applications. If you've got an older installation and you're having problems with it, it can't find files and stuff like that. That's why they actually created a new directory structure for application installations. Your best bet is to completely uninstall it and then reinstall it. Now, the Samsung tablet will connect to a PC with a micro USB cable and will show up as a flash drive. So then you can load map, waypoint, and configuration files by drag and drop from your PC. Now, I'm saying PC. I don't have a Mac. I have no idea if you can do it with a Macintosh. The other one that you can do is it's got an SD card, and so you can load the cards onto or files onto the SD card, plug it in, and then use the internal file manager to move it around. I found that the native Android file managers are woeful. Saying that they are barely adequate is giving them too much credit. So you'll probably want to get a third-party file manager from the Play Store. This is the ONN 7-inch tablet from Walmart. Okay, it's pros. This guy's $59. It will go on sale for $49 around Christmas time. Okay. I didn't believe it either. It runs Android 11. It can interface to things via Bluetooth or via cable, again with that little multiplexer box. The cons, it doesn't have an internal GPS, so it's not what I call a standalone device. It needs an external GPS source. Since it does not have an internal GPS, the Bluetooth protocol stack does not have GPS support, so it needs a helper app. There's an app in the Google Play Store called Bluetooth GNS, and it does a wonderful job. And you can then connect to, you know, the Bluetooth that's external to the device with no problem. The display is not as bright as the Samsung Tab A, and it does not have a outdoor brightness override. The claimed battery life is 10 hours. I wouldn't believe it. The one problem with this thing is if you do try to charge it in flight, you want to start with a fully charged battery and then have it plugged into your charger, because then it will maintain the charge. But if you put this thing in your glider at half charge, turn on and plug it in and start charging it, with everything it's doing, I haven't had it happen to me, but I've had several people tell me that it will overheat and shut down. So one of your rules with this thing is that you run it with when you put it in a plane, it's fully charged, and if you're going to charge it from something in the plane, whether it's a power brick or whether you're tying it to the aircraft battery in some fashion, be sure it's fully charged before you plug it in. I've tested it with 7.41 for XCSoar and everything works. Um, it works with XCSoar Jet. However, you're going to need a network connection for the SkySight model data. This thing does not have a cell phone circuit in it like the ODN does. So that means you're going to have to hotspot it off of your cell phone. So that means you got something else you got to play with in the cockpit. Of course, you play with it before you take off. SeeYouNavigator, everything works. Now your SeeYou subscription is needed. I thought it was $59 this year. I forgot to go look today. So the other one is it wants a network connection for SkySight model data. Strangely enough, the OD2 would download the model SkySight model data for the day and then just play it back. Unfortunately, Navigator wants a live connection. It doesn't cache the SkySight model data. The I use either a Bluetooth GPS hockey puck or a Bluetooth DeVario. So, you know, if I've actually put connected a Bluetooth dongle on the back of my 302 and used it. The Navitier Bluetooth dongles do not work with XCSoar. There is something in their handshake that is different. LXNav Bluetooth dongles, interestingly enough, do work with XCSoar. I guess I kind of expect that. Strangely enough, both type of dongles will work with Navigator, because I've got one glider with the LXNav Bluetooth and the other with the Navitier Bluetooth. For XCSoar, you can plug it in, and I've done it in the past, and it showed up as a flash drive. Interestingly, I plugged it in today and it did not. So I'm not sure what changed and where. So with this one, today to load the files, just to be sure that it would happen, I did it with the SD card. And like I say, you want a third-party file manager app. Navigator loads map, waypoint, and configuration data via SeeYou Cloud. You can use the Navitier provided data, or you can upload your own files and to the SeeYou Cloud and then bring them down to Navigator. One nice thing about the subscription for Navigator is it covers Navigator, the cloud, SeeYou for the PC, and then if you know, obviously, then if you've got a ODN, you've got a connection through that. Okay, the GPS sources. I've got the little one on top, the black one. That's called a QStar 818. It has 1 hertz and 10 hertz update frequency for the GPS data. Battery life up to 42 hours. Unfortunately, it's no longer in production. Expect to spend about 85 bucks for it for new old stock somewhere, and they are starting to disappear. I've had mine for, oh, probably 5 years, and it just works. Okay. The replacement in their line is the red one. It's an 818, it's BL 818 GT. That's the red one. It only has a 10 hertz update frequency. It claims a battery life of up to 20 hours, and you need to expect that one to be about $140. Um, there's the information on the Bluetooth GNSS uh, protocol stack helper app. I tested at the 1 hertz rate on XCSoar 741 and Jet 719 and Navigator. And so all three of them worked at the 1 hertz rate. I have tested at 10 hertz on XCSoar and it works just fine. But I did not test it with Jet and I did not test it with Navigator. So that's gives you an idea. So if you need an external GPS and you don't want to do any changes to wiring or add things behind your panel so that you can use this little handheld device, this is one way to get GPS source. Okay, Navitier OD2, and then there's the OD IGC. It's a standalone device. The SeeYouMobile software, it's very capable, it's very configurable. The software license, if you own one of these, the software license generally goes with the device. Unless somebody bought an OD2 Lite and then put the software on it, then I'm not sure how that game plays out. It can interface to the glider via a cable for data and for charging. They've got a cable that plugs directly into the back of a, well, with a RJ45 to DB9 connector or adapter, it'll plug into the back of a 302, for instance. It's got a bright-ish display. It's sunlight readable, it's usable. It has an internal GPS. There is an IGC version available, approved version available. The OD2 you should be able to pick up for, around $200, $300. Again, on the cons, it's no longer produced, so it's an end-of-life device. At some point, the support will drop off, but parts and services are still available, so it's a viable, especially again for the beginning cross-country pilots. Somebody is upgrading. Look around your club. This might be a very worthwhile device to pick up. It does have a resistive touchscreen, and so the tip of your finger is a little blunt. So a stylus or a slightly longer fingernail is recommended. It has a 5-inch screen, limited battery life. Uh, I always figured it was 2 hours, and I was just looking on the Navitor webpage today, and they say it's a 1 hour device. So you'll probably want a charger of some type for it, uh, just to keep it topped up. Now whether that's again, a power brick, so you don't have to change anything in the glider and you can just carry it with you from glider to glider. The IGC version has a much larger battery. It claims up to 11 hours, so there's no in-flight charging required on that device. The Navitor ODI and ODN IGC, good standalone device. It's current production. It can interface to the glider via Bluetooth. It's got a nice bright display, internal GPS. There's an IGC approved version available. It claims 15 hours of battery life. So it's got a 5.5-inch screen. I'm listing that as a con because I want one bigger. Okay. Navigator software does have its limitations. SeeYouMobile has more features, and Navigator is still evolving. It's expensive. Remember I said early on, free, I can use my cell phone, or I want to keep it under $200. So you can see that's his current price. I'm not sure if these are sale prices or if this is the new price for it, but that's what I picked up today on the web. So that's that device. The yeah, let's see. We're I need a moment here. I'm having to go back through a directory structure to pull up a file. Alrighty. So this is Stefan Langer, and he's discussing uh, how to use or how he likes to try to set these machines
It's
up.
so important to train using the software. There are two different options available. The first and easy one is to use the simulator in XCSoar. There you can simulate that the glider is in the air, that you glide in a specific direction. There you can see all the info boxes, the cross section of the airspace, and so on. That's very useful, but not really the best option. What's really perfect is to use your Condor soaring setup to connect it with your device, and then you can fly perhaps even a competition and see how it works, which info boxes you really need, and so this is really the best setup. In my case, I'm using an OpenVario device connected to Condor. There you need a serial converter, USB to serial converter, and then it works. Here with smartphones, with Android devices, there's a possibility to use a Bluetooth dongle or Bluetooth connection, and so it is not really expensive to use it with Condor, and it really helps a lot so that you are really familiar with the software when you're flying the first time with it. Because in the air, you really want to look out. You don't want to focus too much on your navigation device because it's dangerous and it distracts a lot. Yeah.
Okay, so we're back. One of the things that I did when I went to the ODI, when I joined the partnership that had the ODI, the ODI has software. You can see it right here. That is a ODI simulator that will run on a PC. And I took an existing flight that I remembered rather well, and I ran the flight over and over and over on my computer so that I could say, what pieces of information does the ODI have that I need to make decisions as I move through this flight? Um, and so this isn't a flight simulator. This is a simulator that runs on the PC that is simulating the cockpit computer. So it simulated the ODI, and then I'll show you one here in a few minutes that simulates XCSoar. As Stefan was talking about it, probably the best way to do it is connecting into Condor. ODI has a special cable that plugs into the ODI and then plugs into a USB port, and then it's recognized by Condor. Navigator, I believe it's a special Bluetooth dongle that plugs into the PC. And then with XCSoar, it requires some additional support software, but basically you can do it over Wi-Fi, and then you put a piece of software on your computer that takes the Wi-Fi channel and turns it into a serial port, and that way you can get the data from Condor into your XCSoar device. You use this to help you decide how you want to set up your device. You want to observe the flight and the decisions you would like to make. In other words, what information do you need? And then, you got to practice your skills in using the in using the device. So here's the layout that I came up with for my navigator. So what we've got here is I have the information that I want to see easily at the top of the display. I have information at the bottom that is nice to know, or maybe I want to click off and see something else on the device. The nice thing about Navigator, it allows a arbitrary box info box layout. So I've got a box that's the 3 units or 3 box widths, normal box widths wide, that has my target. So I can easily read the name. I'm not trying to read some short name. And then underneath that, I've got the distance, my arrival altitude, and my arrival time for that turn point. Okay, well, this one was sitting at my house, so I'm 32 miles, 33 miles north of this turn point, and I'm sitting on the ground, and it's saying from where I am right now, I'm going to get there at 8,200 feet below pattern altitude for that turn point. Okay. I have my current L over D, and I have my required L over D. And I use this because as long as this ratio is greater than 1, I'm doing okay. If it goes less than 1, I better be finding lift, or I better be looking for another place to go. I have my current altitude. I have my AGL, and notice I have that in yellow. The AGL is important for me because I fly motor gliders. And so I have a set of operational rules that I work with. And while it is still AGL above the WG, whatever, 84 datum, it still gives me a place to look quickly and notice that it's a completely different color. It's a color that I can see. It just jumps out at me. Below that, I've got my McCready setting. And below the McCready setting, I have the speed to fly that's associated with that McCready setting. I've got ground speed, wind, and right now I'm carrying last thermal. I'm trying to see if that actually tells me anything or helps me. I'm not sure that it does. And then I have the altitude gain for the current thermal that I'm in. I have a GPS status indicator over here. This is my compass indicator. Red always points north. Here's my flight line. This is the line that I am flying. My aircraft's symbol. This corner, this is has a set of icons that Navigator has defined. So I'm sitting still on the ground. That's what the guy standing there is. So there's one for cruise, there's one for thermaling. Okay. This indicator over here is my uh, scale for the map. So in the setting that you see right here, that distance represents 10 nautical miles. So from center of the page to the side is somewhere between 15 and 20 nautical miles. And so that gives me a scale to work with. This menu right here accesses the functions in the Navigator, in Navigator. This one accesses the display layers. So I could turn on and off SkySight. I can turn on and off the terrain. For instance, this one is showing white because it was just an artifact of the screen capture that I used. But I normally fly without the terrain in the background. If I fly with anything in the background, I fly with the weather maps, the forecast maps, forecast model data. Let's see if I can be a little more precise. Mainly because if I start putting the map information behind it, then I start seeing it reduces the contrast for the information I'm looking for. I have my battery state, what time it is, and how long I've been in the air. So the top has the stuff that I use to fly with, along with the middle. The bottom down here has the stuff that is nice to have. And again, I use the colors. The blue is tied to my the waypoint that I'm going to. The yellow is my height above AGL, and the MacCready setting is green just to make it stand out. And then the way you adjust the MacCready setting is you touch that, and then you get a control that allows you to raise and lower the MacCready. And like I say, then I have the speed to fly as a reference to keep me going. The other thing that we can play with now, that's Navigator. Okay. Um, Now this one is XCSoar. Okay, so in XCSoar, I've got very much the same stuff. So the top left over here, oh, I'm sorry, that's not showing up. Let me see. Okay. The two boxes I have the cursor under. The top one is my waypoint and distance. The one below it is the altitude arrival. The next two boxes on the top, next two from the left, are my current glide ratio. And then underneath it is the glide ratio to the first alternate in my alternates list. This is my cruise display. That's what this indicator down here is saying in the bottom right corner. The next over, I have my MacCready, and notice that the box has the MacCready setting in nice big numbers, and then underneath it are some small numbers, and that's the airspeed for that MacCready setting for this glider. And then the next box underneath it is my ground speed. Over here on the far right corner, the top box is my altitude MSL, and the bottom box is my height MSL, or AGL. So right there. Down here, what's not showing, because I didn't have a GPS connected to it, so the glider sits right about 20% up in the screen. You can see the waypoints. So this one is a waypoint. This is a landable. Purple indicates a landable location, and the others, the other marks are for waypoints. Down at the bottom, on the bottom left, you can see some little numbers down here above the bottom row of boxes. That's the scale. So this is saying that my width of my screen is 21 nautical miles. The boxes across from the left going across is the distance to finish. So if I'm flying a task, this will be the distance around the task to the finish line. This is my finish time, then my flight duration, and just because I like to see it, I have my local time right there. Okay. So that's the kind of information that you can get from from this. Now, if I come in here for configuration, I can come up here with my site files. By the way, if you have a new installation on your Android, come into this tab, and that gray bar up at the top will tell you where the directory is under the new directory structure in Android, so you know where to go to put your various files. So in this case, I have my Colorado high resolution map. If I click on this, I can select another map. So for instance, I've got Nephi, I've got Logan, New Mexico. That was for when I was down at Moriarty. I have my waypoint files. So this is my 2023 150 nautical mile radius files, but you can also see an older set for Kelly, an older set for Nephi, and an older set for Logan. To load them, all I have to do is click on it, go down here and tell it, I select it, and then it will load it for me. I can add additional waypoints. Here's my airspace. So this one is from the soaring resources page. So that's all USA. And I have that selected. I have a more airspaces right here. And where this one is useful is these are TFR files from a couple of years ago. And so I can pull that TFR file and as a matter of fact, I'll do it. It won't, you can see now, except this is TFR for a fire that was over south of Nephi a couple of years ago. So it wouldn't mean anything on my current map, but this gives me, that allows me to drop the TFRs in so I have them for the day. My data file for Flarm, so I go out to FlarmNet and download the database, throw it into this directory up here, the XCSoar data directory, and I identify the file right here, and then I have the new version of everybody's radio to contest number mapping. The map display, I can adjust the orientation, track up or glider position in it. So all of these things are available to play with. And so we'll go back. The other thing that I can do, and we'll play with this, I'm always interested to see how a piece of software allows me to enter a task on it. I can load, when I put the cup file in, I can load my task with the cup file, and that's fine. And the device will maintain a list of tasks. But to add a task, okay, I'm going to put one in, and so I'm going to put in Lyman. So it added that from Lyman, because I'm going to show you a flight here in a moment. So we've got agate. We'll add another one. Let's bring in Calhan. And Aardvark. Berry Park. And let's add one more just to get home. And I'm going to make that last one the finish. So I've got a start line and a finish line, and I've got 4 turn points in between. You can save your task by hitting save. You could browse for other tasks that you already have saved. If you have a device that you can declare a task to, you hit declare, and then it will try to declare the task to a connected device. You can set up the rules for surrounding, am I doing badges? Am I doing a racing task, an assigned area task, all of that kind of stuff. And then I can set my, finish heights, start heights, open time, all of that kind of stuff. And since I changed the task, it's telling me I could revert my changes, but I want to save them. And you can see the task coming in from the side. Let me scroll this out a little bit and come down here and pan it around. So you can see I started the task out here at Lyman, bringing it back across and up and then back to Kelly. So it display that's the task display on the map. The purple are landing indications or landing locations. The other marks like this double mark right here or one down here, these are turn points. They're just turn points that are defined. Okay, so my task as it's defined right here is 97 nautical miles. And so fun little thing to play with. So that's what XCSoar looks like when you're looking at the screen. Oh, that's interesting. All right. Okay. Now I'm only going to run part of it. This was the flight uh, that I was just putting in, only I started it at Lyman. The reason is I didn't have a start gate over here. And so if I take off from here, you won't see it advance when it hits Lyman because, well, anyway, because I didn't have a start gate to fly through over here. And so this was a flight that I made that I planned a couple of years ago, 264 kilometers. So, you know, 3 hour flight, three, maybe 4 hour flight, something to play with. The When you're looking at the display, let me go back and bring this guy back in. Okay, one of the things that we can do with this is there is a simulator in the software, and I have it set up so that I can replay a file. So this is the file. I'm going to move this down here just so it's out of the way. And you can control the playback speed. I'm going to run it at 10 times because nobody wants to sit here for 4 hours and watch this. And we're not going through the whole thing, so don't worry about it. But there are some there's some things on here that I want to show you. I have a cursor that I'm moving on the screen. I apologize for it being so small. I need to work on that. But I'll show you some things about how this operates. Okay, so we're getting ready to take off. The bars over here are altitude needed. We just got a sound that said we took off. Now watch carefully around the airplane. See the line that's growing? That's the amoeba. That's how far I will go. It just complained about the Class B airspace. Now, notice that the landing areas are starting to pick up green circles around them. What that means is they are now reachable with the 1,000-foot safety altitude that I have set over a field for landing purposes. So now we're in a thermal. Over here on the left side, the colored bar, notice that it has an altitude on the top of it. The two colors, the darker color is altitude, or that's at my current McCready setting. The lighter color is at McCready 0. So notice it's saying I still need 17,000 feet to finish. So it's computing to finish, going all the way to the finish. Notice down here it says I will finish at, whatever time it is, so 3:27 there. Or no, 17:19. I've got 3 hours and 26 minutes. Up here in the top left, notice this blue is growing. This is a depiction of the thermal strength that we're encountering, and the little black diamond is the altitude that the glider is at. So I went up to the one thermal, I'm moving over, I'm losing some altitude, I'm going to hit a thermal and start climbing again. Yeah, I'm already going up. You know, this thermal is, I'm averaging 8 knots for the thermal. With this, the second from the right on the bottom is the last 30 seconds. And then up here at the top is how much altitude I've gained in that thermal above that. So the line right here with the arrow on it, that's pointing me towards, in this case, Lyman. And that's what's up here at the top. You can see at the top left, it says Lyman Municipal, and it gives me the distance, and it's also giving me a heading, degrees in heading underneath that. So this is the kind of thing that you can get. Let's see if I can speed it up through some of the thermal here and get us on a flat glide. So anyway, you can see that it's changed over here for the thermal. The the light blue is current and the dark blue is past history for the day. Okay. And then the vertical is height and the width is strength. So notice as I pop out, I've got Chance as a possible land out point. And if I were to, it's telling me Arrow Bear, which is behind me, is my number one choice. You can see that at the bottom of the second box from the right on the second row. And it's also telling me that I've got like a 4-to-1 glide ratio to get back to it. So that's not too bad. Now it's switched to Chance as my alternate. And it's saying I only need like 3.41 or 3.4, 3.3 to get to it. And so as I move past Chance, it will stay as my number one choice. From my current altitude, the bottom second row, far left, I've got 8,600 feet or 5,600 feet. I'm going to arrive at Lyman under current conditions at roughly 5,600 feet above the pattern. I'm running 113 knots ground speed. I'm 7,000 feet, 7,600 above the ground and 13,000 above sea level. So, and I'm only going to run this until we get to Lyman and make the Lyman turn point. See if I can speed it through this thermal a little bit. So notice that I'm no longer needing 17,000 feet. I need 8,500 feet to get home. So that's not too bad. Down here in the bottom corner, it has a replay. Over here in the top right in the map display, it's got an arrow that's pointing towards north. So here we are coming into Lyman. So I'm going to get to Lyman 6,200 feet above the field or above the pattern. And we're only about 2 miles from the airport. I'll go just a little bit past it and then make a left turn. Notice that my arrow saying, go to the next turn point. I just got the indicator. I switched to agate. I'm 16 miles from agate. And so now all my calculations are based going to agate. Once I'm out of the turn, now Lyman, the airport at Lyman is my alternate. When I'm in a thermal, I change a couple of these. I keep the altitudes over here on the right. I keep the McCready always up there, and I keep the distance and the altitude to arrival altitude at the turn point always there. But I do change the glide ratios to altitude gained, 30-second average, and what the overall thermal average has been. And then once we pop out of this thermal, we're up around 15,000 feet. And so once we pop out of the thermal, notice that I now have Lyman as my alternate. Okay. And that's good enough. So running the simulation in the software for the just a second. Running the simulation in the software for the tool can be helpful, but it can also be somewhat frustrating. As you could see when it was in the thermal, that kind of thing. So what would be nice, and this is where the recommendation is to get it on Condor, is you could put out a task you can load your IGC flight in, and then you can fly the IGC flight with your computer next to you, and you can say, oh, which boxes do I want? Which boxes do I need? That kind of thing, so that you can get a feel for how you would use the device and what information you're going to ask for it to present to you in the cockpit. So, so at this point, we're around to questions.
Hi, Dave. I think we've got some of the questions answered, and people can pipe back up if we didn't get them all. But we have a couple of things here. John asks, any comment about Aufwind for iOS devices?
Ask the question again. A word, I missed a word in there.
It's Aufwind, Aufwind, and I know there's a tracking system for Aufwind, but I wasn't sure about a computer type device.
No, I don't know if there is.
Okay. All right. Maybe someone can, if they have an answer to that, can put it in the question and we'll pass it on. Richard asks, why do you travel with two devices with SeeYouNavigator?
I don't. I use them individually. It's just I was giving you a list of what I have used in the past year.
Okay. Bill asks, is it possible to get a secure IGC file directly out of a 302 via some sort of a Bluetooth dongle plugged into a serial port, perhaps, to transfer the file directly to an Android smartphone upon completion of the flight?
Uh, n not not with the Navitier dongle, because the Navitier dongle doesn't work. First off, Navigator is not using all of the capabilities of the 302 yet. So, for instance, for Navigator, you don't have the flight download capability yet. And the Bluetooth dongle, the generic one that they have, that Navitier has for the FLARM, won't work with XCSoar. So, right now, with the devices I've tried some general purpose Bluetooth dongles, and I have not been successful in getting them to connect when plugged into the back of the 302. So right now, that's one of those things that I haven't been successful in doing it. The only way I've been able to do it is with a wired connection.
Okay. We have a question for GPS. Have you tried Bad Elf with Bluetooth?
No, I have not.
Okay. If anyone has, they can pop in with a comment, I guess. Kirk asks, which software supports Top Medio besides Navigator?
None that I know of. None of the ones I've worked with do.
Okay.
I'm answering the one about the
Yes. Okay, and Kirk also says you can download flights on Navigator. So, and there is someone mentioned that there's a free version of Navigator for the phone, but it is limited, and I don't think you can download flights with the free version. So that's something to look into if you're going to try to find the free version.
Correct.
All right. Any chance that the SeeYou app on mobile will have integration with SkySight for offline use, same as the UDI?
SeeYou app on mobile. You mean the flight software map or flight software app, or do you mean the SeeYou planning software like I showed with the task on it?
I'm not sure. He's going to have to ask again. He may mean SeeYouMobile, but
Yeah, SeeYouMobile, okay, the SeeYouMobile, which is the same one that runs on the OD2, if you connect it to a PC before flight and you run the Navigator updater, it will go and pull, you can have it go pull the SkySight uh, forecast images, and it will cache them on the OD or the OD2 for use in flight. Navigator won't do that. And OD won't do a real-time connection in flight.
Okay, let's see. Any experiences loading blip map output into XCSoar? Supposedly it can be done.
XCSoar will work with RASP products. And hang on just a second. I meant to show that and I didn't. I apologize. Let me get this up on the okay. If you're oh, just a second. There we go. Under config, under system site files, you have RASP right here on the last item on the list. And some sites will load their RASP runs so that they can be downloaded. Uh, it's a basically a think of it as a zip file with the map images, the model images in the file, and they're time tagged. So far in the US, there's only two places, Avignal and Saint-Yves, that are doing that. We have a member in our club that runs RASP and creates that file so that our club members can download it and put it in so that you have the RASP time sequenced forecast, and you can pick any of the maps or any of the products, and then have it. It will update. I think on 1 hour intervals, but that's a pre-flight action. But that's one of the things that can be done. The other one that let me see. No, I can't get to it from here. Uh, the other one that can be done is you can, if you've got somebody that is doing that at your club, then you can do it with the file and just download it, and you name it to the special name that XCSoar expects to see, and then you can bring it, you can bring the data in. Let me show you how to bring the data in. That it's a good question. All right, we'll bring the data in, and the way you bring the data in is you go to info and you go to weather, and then if you had a RASP loaded, let's see if I can get one. Let's see if they have it. Okay. And oh, let's do the convergence. And so now, no, it's not going to display because we're outside the time window for it. We're outside of the date and time window for it. Anyway, what I was attempting to show you there is that's how you would get your weather data up on your display in XCSoar. Okay, next.
Okay, I think, I don't know if you've covered this, but will XCSoar take SkySight live?
XCSoar Jet will connect to the server and download the latest model runs. But remember, SkySight is not weather, it is a model forecast. But SkySight Jet can do that.
Okay. Um, uh, let's see, which devices support the FLARM display? I know the Uni N does.
Uh, UDI 2 is supposed to, but I've never done it because I've never had it connected to the FLARM. XCSoar will, and so XCSoar, XCJet, and I'm assuming LK8000 will. I don't know about Top Hat. And what they'll do is they'll give you the little radar scope that you can use for well, they'll either give you the radar scope, or if you got it to where it displays it, they'll put the target on your map. But none of the cockpit computers will give you any warning information. That only comes from the real-time display that's connected
That's interesting.
directly to the connected directly to the FLARM unit.
Okay, that's interesting. All right. Um, so Andre says, I mean, see you on my phone does not show SkySight in flight once network connection is lost. I
Yep.
believe that UDN can download the forecast for the day. Maybe I've not figured this out yet.
No, it can't yet. The UDN, okay, if you're running Navigator, Navigator does not yet cache the SkySight data. And if you lose the connection in flight, then you will lose the data. Now, it's a whole lot better than it used to be. When I first started testing with it, I got out east and my entire display went blank because I lost the network. So I lost my map display and everything, even though I had maps and stuff stored on my device. And what I had to do was shut off my hotspot and make the device standalone as far as a network connection, and then everything worked. But then I didn't have the SkySight data because that's only coming across downloaded during the flight. So that's one of the things when I say it's not quite there yet for all the stuff that you would like to see it do. That's one of the things that I'm waiting for them to add.
Okay, David says maybe BFSS could publish a RASP data, output data to the XCSoar file manager. That would be appreciated.
That's yeah, that would be appreciated, but I don't know if our member is willing to jump through the hoops because there's always hoops to jump through. I'll ask. But that again is only the Front Range of Colorado down into northern New Mexico.
Okay, Brent asks if have you a matrix of devices, software, GPS, power options, battery life, etc.
No, I keep it all in my head, and it's a very, very poor retrieval mechanism.
Okay. Brian says his comment is that Top Hat will display farm traffic.
I would have expected it. It's just that I didn't know how far back that would have been added.
Okay. Jay says, will Nano 4 unit connect to Power Farm and or the Cambridge 302 data? And if so, how?
I have no idea. That would be a question that you would probably want to call Paul Rimdy and ask.
Kirk says, with a cellular connection, you can, according to Navitier. I'm not sure which he's referring to here, but
Yeah, if you use yourself, if okay, the ODN has a cell phone radio data circuit in it. Okay, so that will connect to the cell system if you have an account to connect it to. And the other method is by connecting, um, by using your phone as a hotspot. Then you connect your, like if you're running on a, like the Android tablet or something like that, you can connect your tablet to the phone as a hotspot, and then Navigator can get out to the network and pull the data. Okay. Um, but so yeah, if you've got a cell connection, it'll work. Now, cell connections are kind of interesting because we've seen evidence in our part of the country that you've got good cell service. Of course, remember we're dealing with personal communication devices. It's not the old original cell phones. We have good connections even back in the mountains. Interestingly enough, where we find holes out here is when we get out over the plains and we get away from the population centers. So it's been kind of an interesting thing with that. And right now, when if Navigator doesn't have access to the network, then you don't have the OGN data and you don't have the SkySight data. Uh, the things that you would pull across the network. But as long as you've got your maps downloaded and your turn point files and your airspace files and stuff like that downloaded on the machine, they have matured it so that if you drop the connection, the screen doesn't go blank.
Okay, one more, just a comment from Nicholas. UDI 2 connected to the farm will display alarms and give verbal warnings.
That's a good piece of information. Now, I will give you one caveat with that, though, as compared to what I call the real-time display, and that is that those alarms and alerts are competing with the rest of the processing in the UDI. Now, if the UDI is simple enough, the delay probably won't be that bad, but be careful, even if your cockpit computer can display it and announce it, because it still will probably have some lag compared to the display in your panel.
Hey, Eric asked if there are altitude limitations for cellular data.
Oh, well, they tell us to turn it off when we get on the airplane, but that actually harkens back to the old cell phones, and it also harkens to the possibility of interference with something on the aircraft. I don't know. I've had good connection at 18,000 feet, so I don't know what the upper limit could be.
Okay, well, I think that's it, Dave. Thank you. We're getting some kudos for you, and we appreciate your time.
All righty. Well, so we're next time, the same bat channel, same bat time, February 23rd. We will be doing soaring pilot physiology. The presenter will be Dr. Quay Snyder. He's a retired Air Force flight surgeon who works actively with the commercial aviation industry and the FAA on pilot medical considerations. So that should be very worthwhile. So we'll leave the session up for a little bit. I'm going to mute my mic. We'll leave the session up for a little bit in case there are any other questions that come in that we can put on our list to try to answer from email later on. Have a good one, everybody.